The day you save $10,000, nothing dramatic happens on the outside. No one applauds. The sky doesn't change color. Your phone doesn't buzz with congratulations. But inside you, something quietly rearranges itself. It feels like standing in a room where a low, constant noise suddenly turns off. And in that silence you hear thoughts you've been avoiding for years. Thoughts about how much you've been carrying, how much you've been giving, how deeply you care and how exhausted that's made you. If you're someone who cares too much, money has never just been money. It's been safety proof, permission to breathe. You've always been the person who overextends, emotionally and financially. You pick up the slack. You help before being asked. You worry not only about your future, but everyone else's too. And for a long time, that meant living in a quiet state of anxiety, telling yourself it's normal to feel this tense all the time. Before $10,000, your nervous system rarely rests. Psychology calls this scarcity mindset, but it feels more personal than that. It feels like always being on call. Like if you let your guard down, something bad will happen. So you plan, save what little you can, sacrifice comfort, delay joy. You care too much to fail, too much to fall behind, too much to be a burden. And because you care so deeply, your brain learns to associate money with survival, not choice. Neuroscience explains that when we live under constant financial pressure, the brain stays in threat mode. Cortisol stays high, decision-making narrows, emotions intensify. For people who care too much, this effect is amplified. Your empathy makes you more sensitive to instability. You don't just worry about yourself, you worry about how your choices might affect others. You overthink, you overprepare, you overcarry. Saving $10,000 doesn't erase those traits, but it changes their weight. For the first time, you're not just reacting. You're not living one unexpected problem away from panic. There's a buffer now, and that buffer does something powerful to people like you. It gives your mind space to turn inward. That's when the realizations begin. You notice how much of your energy has gone into managing other people's emotions, how often you said yes because saying no felt unsafe, how many times you stayed quiet to keep things smooth. Caring too much wasn't just kindness, it was a coping strategy, a way to control uncertainty by being indispensable. Psychologists call this hyperresponsibility. You feel responsible for outcomes that were never yours to carry, for moods that aren't yours to fix, for stability that should be shared. And when money is tight, that tendency intensifies. Because if you can't control circumstances, you try to control yourself. Be better, be smaller, be easier. But now, with that savings sitting quietly in the background, something shifts. You don't feel as urgent. You don't feel as desperate to be liked, needed, or approved of. Not because you've become cold, but because your nervous system isn't screaming anymore. You realize that some of the people you cared for so deeply never learned to care back in the same way. And that realization hurts, but it also frees you. This is the uncomfortable middle, where you see both sides of yourself clearly, the beauty of your empathy, and the cost of it. You see how caring too much made you resilient, intuitive, deeply human, and how it also made you tired, anxious, easily overlooked. Money didn't cause this awareness. It just gave you the quiet needed to notice. There's a healthy side to caring too much that emerges here. When survival pressure eases, your empathy becomes intentional instead of automatic. You still feel deeply, but you don't abandon yourself to prove it. You begin to understand boundaries not as walls, but as filters. You don't stop caring, you start choosing where your care goes. Behavioral science shows that people act differently when they feel secure. You stop rushing. You stop over-explaining. You don't chase closure or reassurance as desperately. You trust that not every silence is rejection, that not every problem needs you to fix it. That rest is not selfish, it's necessary. But there's also grief, quiet, unexpected grief. You mourn the version of yourself who lived in constant tension, who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice, who thought being strong meant never needing help. You look back and feel compassion, not shame. That version kept you going, but it doesn't have to lead anymore. Saving $10,000 doesn't make life perfect. It doesn't heal every wound, but it changes your relationship with fear. And when fear loosens its grip, caring too much transforms. It stops being self-erasure and becomes self-erasure, and becomes self-Uranus. You still show up, you still love deeply, but you no longer bleed invisibly to keep everyone else comfortable. You also start seeing society differently, how instability keeps people compliant, how exhaustion is normalized, how people who care the most are often rewarded with more responsibility, not more care. And you realize that financial stability, even a modest amount, is quietly revolutionary. It gives you the ability to pause, to say no, to walk away when something feels wrong. The most surprising change is this. You start caring for yourself the way you always cared for others. You check in with your own emotions. You notice when you're tired before you collapse. You stop minimizing your needs. And slowly, gently, your life becomes less about holding everything together and more about building something sustainable. This is not about becoming detached or indifferent. It's about integration, letting your sensitivity exist alongside yourself. letting your empathy coexist with boundaries, letting money support your nervous system instead of controlling it. So, if you've reached this point or you're slowly moving toward it, know that you're not just saving money, you're retraining your brain. You're teaching yourself that safety doesn't have to come from overkill, that stability doesn't require self-sacrifice, that you're allowed to rest without everything falling apart. And maybe tonight, in this quiet space, ask yourself something honest. If you no longer had to care out of fear, who would you become if you started caring from choice instead?